Welcome everyone, both here in the studio and those of you who are joining us via the live stream. For many years now, it has become a tradition here at Elia Group to release a new study during the end of November. And this year we choose to zoom in on the power of flex and how consumers like you and I can benefit from the energy transition. The reason why we have placed the topic of flexibility high on the agenda is, of course, related to the changing reality on both the demand and the production side of the electricity system. Letting the system develop without encouraging changes would put the stability of the grid at risk, and it would be highly inefficient. And that's the rationale behind our study. Tom, what can we expect from today's event?
Well, Madeleine, our focus will, of course, be on presenting the study's results. We have interviewed many people, consumers, companies, federation, and everyone is convinced. Flexible consumption is urgently needed. However, it's not yet happening. Our experts have investigated the barriers to flexible consumption and will propose some solutions. We will also welcome the next generation on stage. The Viewpoint team collaborated with students from Belgium and Germany in a student challenge. We'll hear more about that later, but I'm very pleased to say that they're here tonight. So students, make some noise, please. Okay, and we will also visit our national control centers with Frederik Dunon and Stefan Kaffer. Their message is clear. Without flexibility, the electricity system will be at risk. Now, fingers crossed that we will keep the lights on in the coming hour. It would be a real pity if that's not the case. Isn't it right, Helen?
It would indeed be a big pity, Tom, because over the next hour or so, we are going to showcase the views and approaches of many external stakeholders who provided us with their input for this event. Over the past few weeks, we visited stakeholders in Belgium, Germany, the Netherlands, and the UK. We met many flexibility frontrunners who are passionate about putting consumers at the centre of the energy system. And that's a key point about tonight's event. It's not about pointing fingers, it's about showcasing what innovators are already delivering and what is possible. We want to give you a flavour of what a successful future energy system could look like. And indeed, to round off this evening, we will also hear from the Belgian Minister of Energy, Tine van der Straten. She will tell us how she sees the energy system of the future. So it's worth staying with us until the very end.
Okay, we'll do so, Helen. Thank you very much. Flexibility is about giving consumers more control over their own energy management. But do consumers actually know what flexibility means? We found out by interviewing people both in Berlin and Brussels.
Endverbrauchsflexibilität, ja, weiß ich nicht. Also, wenn wir am Endverbrauch flexibel umgehen, also die Frage ist, was ich wahrscheinlich mit dem vorhandenen Strom mache, also irgendwie auf dem Auto laden oder Batterien laden oder...
Conceptuellement, c'est extrêmement intéressant d'utiliser l'électricité quand elle est là, surtout dans un futur à moyen terme, lorsque au niveau des énergies fossiles, ça va commencer à disparaître ou devenir impayable. Donc c'est sans doute vers ça qu'on va devoir aller, oui.
Also da ich mich in dem Startup-Bereich bewege, weiß ich, dass viele der neuen energieorientierten Startups sich in dem Bereich bewegen. Also sprich von Flexibilisierung der Energiezufuhr im Bereich der Wohnungen.
Wir haben ein E-Auto, wir haben eine Solaranlage auf dem Dach und eine Wärmepumpe im Keller. Also wir sind fully equipped, wie man so schön sagt.
Alle wären natürlich dabei, sich nachhaltigen Lebensmodellen anzupassen, aber die Kosten sind das, was meistens im Wege stehen.
L'électricité a toujours été là, donc c'est toujours été normal de l'utiliser. Et donc il y aura un changement de paradigme, un changement dans notre manière finalement de fonctionner, de réfléchir à notre consommation. Et c'est sans doute ce changement de mentalité-là qui va être le plus compliqué.
We used to be on a dual tariff, which the night tariff was cheaper, but the day tariff was more expensive to match it. So there wasn't really a gain. And maybe now the difference between the two would be greater and it might be worth doing.
Aber ja, natürlich, auf jeden Fall. Also günstigere Zeiten anpassen, wer möchte das nicht?
Yeah, it's clear that the general public is aware of different ways of consuming electricity. However, it's not clear what this means for them personally. Ladies and gentlemen, now it's time to invite our first guest onto the stage. We're moving from hearing from members of the public to hearing from our interim CEO. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Katrien van den Borre. Welcome, Katrien. Elia has a history of publishing studies on flexibility. Let's have a look at our substantial collection of publication on flexibility. The first report was published about 5 years ago. And back then, I remember that not everyone in the energy sector was equally enthusiastic about the study. Why are we putting it today again on the agenda?
Yes, we take a different angle today. So in the previous studies, we were looking at the impact of consumer flexibility in terms of what can it bring to the consumer's valuation. And we did a number of pilot projects with many stakeholders. Now we are really focusing on the barriers and what can be done by the ecosystem, by the TSOs, by the DSOs, by everyone, to unlock the flexibility that we have. And on the why, you already said it, without unlocking this flexibility, the stability of the electricity system will be at risk. So let's face the challenge together, and maybe to illustrate it, let's look at a visual coming from our adequacy and flexibility report that we published earlier this year. And I think it says it all. If you look at the expected evolution of the electricity demand over the next 10 years, we expect a massive increase, around 50%, 50 more electricity demand.
And especially in 3 sectors.
Indeed, and
orange,
you see the colors.
Green, red, yeah.
And what are those? Industry, but also mobility and heating. And so looking at this exceptional, let's say, increase in electricity, we can say that if we don't do anything, it will be highly challenging for the electricity system and highly inefficient for the consumers.
Yeah. The positive thing, of course, is that heating and charging can be shifted in time. You can avoid the expensive price peak.
Yes.
So there's much value in that flexibility.
Yeah, and that's exactly that flexibility offers. It's the possibility to remain out of the peak price. And so as a consumers, you can benefit from this flexibility. You can also benefit from the technological investment that you did. And maybe let's look at another slide, because next to that, there are also other gains, which are gains at societal level. So looking at this slide, you see the capacity needs that are expected in Belgium until 2035. And if you look at the difference between the green line and the red line, you can see exactly what flexibility can bring in terms of saving in capacity. It's around 2 gigawatts, so the equivalent of 2 gas plants that we can save to the benefit of society.
That's immense. So it's not only good for the consumer, but also for society.
Yes.
Before we proceed, Katrien, let's take a moment to explore the changing nature of flexibility. We will now listen to some keynotes from Sanjit Sanghera of Bloomberg New Energy Finance.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today and on such an important topic, flexibility. At BNEF, we believe that flexibility is crucial to the future power system. It's also crucial to the present power system and the past one as well. In fact, flexibility has always played a central role in the power system to ensure that electricity is delivered to consumers in a reliable and affordable way. But now we must wrestle with this third element of the trilemma, sustainability as well, and figure out what that means specifically for flexibility. Where will it come from? What type of markets will bring it to scale? Now at BNEF, we conduct a study out to 2050 on the future of the energy system. As part of that, we run an all-energy net zero scenario with the objective of aligning with the Paris Agreement and limiting the impact of climate change. And this is what it shows us. The future power system will be dominated by wind and solar. In fact, it grows to represent 3/4 of global electricity generation by 2050. Now, the variability of this generation creates a flexibility problem that needs to be addressed. In part, this problem can be solved by repurposing the legacy generation assets that wind and solar are replacing. So on this chart, we see gas with carbon capture and storage in purple, and some amount of hydrogen generation as well. Now, these assets will definitely play a role in balancing the power system, but I think the role they can play is often overstated because change is still needed. Not only is technology development needed, but market reform to make sure that these assets can run at very low capacity factors and still be economic. Now, the demand side of the power system is also undergoing significant changes and offers other possible solutions. Power consumption grows more than threefold due to widespread electrification, and this growth comes with opportunities to renegotiate how power systems interact with this new demand. Some sectors, like aluminum and steel production, will be less flexible, but others, like electric vehicle charging, heat pumps, data centers, electrolyzers, will offer meaningful chunks of flexibility. All of this means that the grid will need to grow, undoubtedly, across all dimensions as well. In fact, we estimate that the power grid of 2050 will be long enough to reach the sun. But this will happen gradually. It takes time to build grid projects, and although all ways to accelerate development should be considered, we are entering into an era where the net zero grid is likely going to lag behind net zero needs. The interconnection queues in the UK, France, Italy, Spain is nearly 600 gigawatts when you add it all up. And that equates to twice the existing installed solar and wind capacity in those markets today. Even projects that are already connected face grid constraints. Here's data from California that shows annual curtailment for wind and solar, along with its penetration rate. Now, what you see here is that the share of wind and solar in the system is growing steadily year by year, but the curtailment levels are nonlinear. They rise quite sharply. This is because the grid is a meshed topology and it exhibits many nonlinear behaviors. And so problems can creep up on you and surprise you. It's not just California. There's similar issues in the UK, Germany, and the Netherlands. So how does flexibility help? Well, here we see a week in July 2030 from our net zero scenario. During the second half of the week, we see that wind is really blowing, and so fossil fuels, shown in gray, are not really needed. Instead, the system can curtail solar generation and charge its batteries. And when the wind and solar aren't available, which we see in the earlier half of the week, the system can call up stored energy as well as run fossil fuel generation. And here we see how wind and solar and storage are impacting the capacity factors of fossil fuels by pushing them offline. Now we look at the same week from the demand perspective. Here we see that EVs have grown to 10% of total demand. That's that layer of purple on top of base demand. And this segment of demand can flex to balance the power system. Here we see EVs expand during periods of surplus and they contract during periods of shortage. In some ways, they become the lungs of the power system. The small share of heat pumps, electrolyzers, and flexible demand also do their share and take advantage of the sun during midday. This isn't just in our modeling. We can already see the role these demand-side assets are playing in local flexibility markets. Now, this is data from the UK local flexibility tenders, where we see EVs have the largest share of contracted capacity, bigger than gas and diesel gensets, in fact, and that capacity is being activated too. So since 2022, EVs, batteries, and demand-side measures have represented half of the activated capacity. And that role is going to grow over time. We know this. We're still in the early days, but EV adoption is going quite rapidly across Europe, with cost parity expected to be reached by 2025 for most vehicles. And EVs are just the near-term opportunity for flexibility. Additional sources are going to come online out to 2030 and beyond. That includes heat pumps, as well as other industry. The chart on the right shows how we see the share of different sectors and whether they will go to hydrogen or electrify in their path to decarbonization. Honestly, in either case, we will see many new opportunities for system flexibility. And so the demand side is rich with flexible assets, both in the near term as well as in the long term. And to conclude, the electricity grid is going through a significant change, but those changes offer solutions. In Europe, EVs will be a critical source of flexibility, but in specific geographies within Europe and outside of Europe, they're going to rely more heavily on stationary storage. These mixes will vary, but flexibility is a solution that will be needed and be sourced from a completely different composition of resources than it was in our legacy system. Thank you. That concludes my presentation, and I hope you all have a very good discussion today.
I really liked the comparison between flexibility and the lungs of the electricity system. Thank you, Sanjit. Catherine, in the preface of the study, you say that flexibility or consumer-side flexibility is a game changer. Could you describe the disruptive force of it?
Yeah, I think it will really bring more innovation and more competition in the energy market. So any owner of a flexible asset can become an active participants in the market. And that's the way to benefit from the price advantage by offering the flexibility that you have in the market. And that's very different from the flexibility that we already use today, which is known as ancillary services. That's a kind of flexibility that TSOs are used to activate, but aftermarket. The other approach is, let's say, an in-market approach, where we activate based on price signals. Both flexibility, both type of flexibility will be necessary in the future, but we expect the consumer side flexibility to massively grow. And we can maybe look at another side showing the increase in flexible assets in Germany on the next 2 decades, with, like we can see on the slide, many developments to come. And so that's the reason why we really believe that flexibility has the potential to become a game changer.
And that is what this study is about. Thank you, Catherine, for sharing these initial thoughts with us, and we see you back at the end of the show. Before we delve into the main messages of the study, let's have a look behind the scenes of our national control centers in Brussels and Berlin. Consumer centricity not only benefits consumers, but it also has a positive impact on the management of the electricity system, making it a real win-win.
We saw some remarkable progress in the energy transition, something we never saw before. For instance, in the last months, in May, we had the generation coming from renewables, which was higher than the generation coming from fossil fuel plants, which shows that we are making real progress in the energy transition. We see the same evolution at demand side. We see a huge increase of the number of electrical cars, of the heat pumps at residential level, but we see also that the industry is electrifying its processes, and we expect in the next 10 years an increase of 50% of the electrical consumption in Belgium. All of this will have huge consequences on the way we manage the system. We have to avoid they all consume at the same time, otherwise the peak will be too high, and the people here in the control center will have some hard time to manage the system, and the system could even be at risk.
In Germany, we see similar trends. Last year, every 6 hours of the year, in the control area of 50 Hertz, we had a surplus of renewable energies. So more than 100% of the load was covered by renewable energies. And with the political targets in Germany of doubling or tripling the generation capacities of offshore wind, onshore wind and solar, it is more needed than ever before to make consumption more flexible. But good news, the technical features for that are existing. So reducing the energy consumption when renewable energy production is low and increasing energy consumption when it is high is needed. With this approach, we make the system more affordable and more sustainable.
Flexibility is not new in Belgium. We do that already for many years. That's what we call the demand-side response at industrial side. And basically, industry reduce their consumption when there is not enough electricity into the system. Basically, we intervene after the market. This way of managing flexibility will not work anymore with millions of assets into the system. We need to adapt the mechanism. It has to become in the market and not an out of the market mechanism. In this way, all the participants can react automatically to some price signals and become an active participant of the market.
Last year in Hamburg, we have recognized that a big steel manufacturer was producing more steel when offshore generation was strong. 50 Hertz is well known for a lot of projects with local utilities where we heat water with renewable energies, power to heat systems. And in the future we will see a lot of electrolyzers producing green hydrogen when there is a surplus of renewable energies. But obviously also private consumers will play a key role by charging their electric vehicles or using their storage capacities when we see a surplus of renewables. So it's not only the investment in grid infrastructure what is needed, and this will be needed in the future as well, but it's also needed an investment in digitization, because digital tools are key to unlock the flexibility of the system.
Now, and as we have just seen, there are major challenges ahead for our energy system. We will need to drastically change our energy consumption. We will need to unlock the real power of flexibility. But what is holding us back? What are the solutions and how will we future-proof our energy system? The answer to those questions and many more are provided in Elia Group's new Viewpoint. And the lady who has made this all possible with her team over the past few months is Maria Jarolin, Head of System of the Future at Elia Group. Hello and welcome, Maria. Now, I can presume and I believe that this has been very, very intense few months just up to now. Are you satisfied with the result, Maria?
Yes, Tom, I think it's clear that it was really intense, but also really fascinating. So we learned so many new things, actually. As you know, we have done at Elia and in this company already a lot of things about flexibility. So this year we needed fresh eyes, a new perspective, and that's why we have the students here also today. But I think in the end, I'm really enthusiastic today to present the results, and I think this will really drive the topic of flexibility one step further.
Well, I think you can be very, very proud, Maria, for the work that has been done. Now, let's have a look at the key messages of the study. One of the key recommendations of the report is a more plug-and-play approach towards flexibility. Can you explain to us what this means?
Yeah, so as we have heard before, the nature of flexibility will change. So there will be a lot of more people involved in flexibility. Big industries, small industries, an EV owner, a heat pump owner. So basically everyone is involved in this, and we cannot expect, and we even don't want that everyone is an expert in the end. So we need to make it as simple as possible, and that's the plug-and-play approach.
Yes. So we already heard there are two major players, industries, companies, and consumers. How do they relate to each other?
So of course they will both play a really big role in the future of flexibility. There's on the one hand side the industry, which is already now delivering some flexibility, but they will increase their services and add new service on top on that. And then there's one like kind of new kids on the block, so the end consumer, the residential end consumer, who can now for the first time contributing to flexibility. And so this we have to take care of. And in the end, this will benefit the system, but also both the residential consumer and the industry.
Yes, everybody can benefit, but it's not the case yet today. And to make it possible, you have a clear recommendation in the study.
Yeah, so that's our second key message. So to really make a change, we need most of the benefits go directly to the consumer so that they can profit as much as possible from their own flexibility.
And that's exactly the problem today. They're not benefiting enough.
Yes, so we can see that on the slide. So there you see on the graph how many flexibility is in there, and then it's illustrated how many steps are there in between to really come to the consumer. And so the value is decreasing, of course, over the time, because all the stakeholders have costs they need to take care of.
Yeah, a lot of stakeholders are involved. Are there any other obstacles today?
Yeah, so I think that's clear. If we are in this study, we talked with a lot of those stakeholders, and so we saw that they have all different blocking points, and we tried to cluster that into three big categories to make it more understandable. So one part is the digital thing. So at the moment, there are a lot of the stakeholders and they all need data, and that's really hard to get at the moment. So there's a lack of digital infrastructure at the moment. And then on the second side, the consumer needs to have a price signal, an adequate price signal coming towards them. So the valorization at the moment is non-existent. And then the third one is that the consumer at the moment, so it's a really complicated system and it's really hard to understand it. And so the consumer is not engaged enough to participate in that flexibility.
Yeah, some three big obstacles, three big barriers blocking consumer side flexibility. But obviously you also have some solutions, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, the bad thing is that I cannot say now we have this one magic solution which will solve everything. But our third key message is about the enablers which can drive the flexibility forward. And that's now on the next slide, you can see the three drivers we identified. So on the first hand side, we need the consumers to be engaged. And that's why we need financial incentives for the consumers. That's the first enabler. The second enabler is, as I said before, the data. So there has to be data access for everyone. So it has to be a smoothless data access for everyone. And the third one is if consumers don't know yet how to be engaged, they also don't know that they want to be engaged in the future. And so if they buy their assets at the moment, they need to be sure that these assets are also flex ready in the future. So if they want to participate in the future and flexibility, they should be able to do that.
Yeah, fascinating and challenging messages, Maria. 3 clear barriers, but also 3 clear solutions. And tonight we'll be exploring all of them. Now, of course, Maria was not alone in conducting this study. Let's now go to Helen, who will be exploring how the team went about preparing this year's study.
Thank you, Tom. Now, yes, I have been joined by Stefano Meneghello, the study's project manager. Stefano, can you tell me a bit more about how you and the team worked together to prepare the study this year?
Thanks, Helen. So we gathered the point of view of many stakeholders, many market actors, hence the name of the viewpoint as well. So in total, we interviewed 55 market actors. We focused first on energy service providers when we understood that they're the bridge between the consumers and the market. So we focused a lot on new entrants, on startups, so like aggregators, software developers, project developers, and so on. And then also interviewed the more historical market players like suppliers or other system operators. After that, we also highlighted the importance of consumers at all voltage levels, so our connected customers like the industries, but then also residential consumers by interviewing them, but also through consumer associations. And lastly, to understand the problems of the assets, we went and spoke to asset manufacturers, so PV manufacturers, PV inverter manufacturers, EVs or heat pumps.
Right, and what was the point of all these interviews? What were you trying to get from these stakeholders?
At the beginning, we wanted to scope our study, and after a few interviews, it was clear that the topic of the study would have been implicit flexibility, so the ability of the consumer to modulate their consumption based on price signals. And after that, we tried to gather all the expectations and issues of all the consumers, as I said, and all actors from all voltage levels. And I would say it's a real innovation in the viewpoint in our studies that we included startups and also low voltage actors next to our higher voltage actors. And we asked a simple question at the beginning: what are the barriers that you or your customer are facing in valorizing your implicit flexibility?
Right, and then you use this input to kind of structure the report, is that right? Indeed.
So the team took all the answers from the interviews to structure our barriers that we can see here, and the team later will explain. And then the barriers were also complemented by what the students did during the student challenge during the summer. We also used other interviews, let's say later in the summer of 2023, then to formulate the solutions with the interviewees, the team, and our experts in the TSOs.
Right. Now, as you mentioned, one thing that was new for this year's study was the involvement of university students from both Belgium and Germany. Stefano, you and the team, you held 2 student challenges whose results fed into the study, as can be seen from the next video that we have to share with you now.
So we have organized this to have students develop an idea of a business operating in the field of flexibility. The students started without too much knowledge about what flexibility is. We really hope to get an unbiased opinion, unbiased idea on how to develop flexibility at the end.
The other presentations were really intimidating. Like, I can see everybody having absolute perfect winning chances.
Every idea was unique. All presentations were great. If I was the judge, it would be very difficult for me to decide who won.
It was a very big honor to get this prize today, and we're having discussions with Elia now about how we can further progress this idea, so that's very exciting as well.
It's a great challenge with surprising results. We will come back to the student challenge later on in the show. But first, we will look at the barriers that prevent us from unlocking consumer-side flexibility on a large scale today. The viewpoint describes 3 categories of barrier to consumer-side flexibility: barriers for industry, residential users, and energy service providers. Now, let's start with the industrial players. Recently, Helen visited Nobian, a European market leader in the production of essential chemicals, and Industeel, a subsidiary of ArcelorMittal, which specializes in the production of steel, of course. Both companies began by providing auxiliary services to the grid already a few years ago, but recently, however, they have moved towards providing implicit flexibility to the grid by reacting to electricity price signals. Now, let's have a look.
Pour transformer la mitraille en acier liquide, on utilise un four électrique. Ce four est surcapacitaire, cela veut dire qu'on est capable de flexibiliser la puissance de notre four en fonction du coût de l'énergie électrique sans impacter tout notre process en aval du four. Nous achetons notre énergie sur le marché de gros auquel nous avons accès et nous sommes également responsables en équilibre. Et si jamais un écart apparaît entre l'énergie consommée et l'énergie réservée, eh bien, nous devons la payer au prix du balancing. En 2021, nous avons développé un outil qui nous permet de visualiser en temps réel le forecast, donc à savoir la baseload et le DES, ainsi que le coût du balancing à la minute. Pour le développement de ce nouvel outil en 2021, nous n'avons pas rencontré trop de problèmes en termes d'acquisition des données. Par contre, pour rapatrier toutes ces datas au niveau de notre EMS, donc notre Energy Management System, là, on a dû développer des programmes complémentaires de manière à pouvoir acquérir plus facilement toutes ces datas. Cet outil qui est actuellement performant nous permet d'engranger pas mal de gains. On va continuer à y travailler. On ne connaît pas encore les pistes exactes, mais on va certainement continuer à travailler sur le sujet.
The journey for supplying eFlex started about 5 years ago. In that 5 years, we made a lot of improvements, and now we can ramp down the plant with 50% in 15 minutes. Making the plant flexible like this was a really good preparation for the energy crisis. There was a huge volatility in the market, enabled us to quickly respond by going to full production or low production depending on the energy price. Did that with a team of operations, planning, process technology and the energy team to come together and start making optimal decisions on when to produce and how much to produce. This resulted eventually in a normal working process where we have actually the same team deciding what to produce the next day and when to ramp up and down. So in the sites in the Netherlands, there's actually no barriers except what the plant can do and what the customers are demanding. However, our sites in Germany are facing a serious challenge with meeting the 7,000 hour rules, which is a real flexibility killer. So in this situation, it's absolutely not possible for plants to flex up and down and make use of high and low electricity prices. We plan to optimize the planning process, to bring all the data in a nice system, to facilitate the making of optimal decisions and also reduce the work for operations in that area.
Now, and while you were watching the video, Jan Sprit joined me on stage. Jan is one of the experts of the Viewpoint team, isn't it, Jan? Welcome on stage. Now, Jan, why are Nobian and Industeel such a good example of industrial flexibility?
Well, Tom, both Nobian and Industeel integrated price signals and therefore the state of the electricity system in their operational decisions. And by doing so, they created one of these win-win situations that Marlene was referring to earlier. On the one hand, they participate to a stable operation of the electricity grid, and on the other hand, they reduce their own energy bill. And they do all of this without having any impact on their output or on the quality of their products.
In the Viewpoint, we read that the main blocking points for industrials is having both the right hardware, but also having the right IT tools to integrate data in their own systems. Obviously, a lot of major industry players are confronted with this barrier.
Yes, we see that a lot of companies have to adapt their technical and operational processes or even just the working habits of their people. And this is not only true in terms of IT, but also in terms of the hardware they operate. We saw one of the first things that Marc Burton from Industeel mentioned was that their electric arc furnace has available capacity. So that's the starting point for them to provide flexibility. The second part was then transforming their IT system, and this digital transformation is for a lot of companies a continuously ongoing process. We know that flexibility is not always at the top of their mind, and we saw that this was crucial for both Nobian and Industrial to integrate this flexibility into their digital transformation. By doing this, they can show the value and be informed about the value and the importance of flexibility. It leads to them integrating it in their operational decisions and ultimately to reducing their bills.
And regarding regulatory barriers, we have a video statement from S4In. One of their key offers is the trading of industrial flexibility in Germany. Let's have a look.
Currently in Germany there is an interim regulation in place where there is no certainty for an industrial asset owner that their system behavior or their system serving behavior is actually not going to be at a later stage penalized financially, and therefore they're just not providing the flexibility to the market because they're scared.
Now, Jan, Maximilian mentioned some regulatory issues, barriers. Can you give a clear example of such a barrier?
Certainly. We can start with an example that is both mentioned by Maximilian and S4In and Nobian in the earlier video. I'm referring to a German regulation called Stromnetz 19.2, or more commonly known as the 7,000-hour rule. It's a regulation in Germany where companies that meet a certain minimum baseline load consumption for at least 7,000 hours per year have the right to reduced grid fee. And this can lead to situations where for these companies, it's actually not interesting to reduce their consumption even at moments of very high prices. And this additional complexity actually adds an additional constraint on the flexibility they can provide and makes them more reluctant to provide it. We use the example of the 7,000-hour rule here, but in general, what we want to say is that all signals, being market signals, tariff methodologies, or regulatory signals, have to point in the same direction, and they have to point towards flexibility.
Now, Jan, at the start of the event, Catherine already mentioned the previous viewpoint, where we saw that companies will be faced with massive increase in electricity use. Will flexibility be one of the answers to respond to that barrier, to that big challenge?
Absolutely. We have already talked about electrification of industrial processes in the previous videos, and we have seen that companies make efforts towards decarbonization, make efforts towards reducing their energy consumption, and flexibility is just a next step in these efforts. Flexibility will never become the core business of these companies, but all these companies have roadmaps towards decarbonizations. They have roadmaps towards a rational use of energy, and the message we want to send is that it's equally important to include time of use and flexibility into these roadmaps, as well as a reduced energy consumption.
That's very clear, Jan. Thank you very much. And now, let's shift from industrial companies to residential consumers or end users. As we have seen here several times tonight, they have a crucial role to play in the future energy system. As Maria already said, they are the new kids on the block. Helen visited a Belgian consumer. Nicolas, he lives with his wife and children in a new built house in Flanders. Let's have a look at Nicolas' story.
This is a new built house. Right from the start, we included everything that was needed to make the house as energy efficient as possible, trying to limit our own footprint and CO2 emissions.
And how easy was it to select the models that you wanted and have them installed in your home?
The heat pump was selected by the entrepreneur, working with very famous brands. Regarding the solar panels there, I had to do a market study, compare different offers, and the choice was mainly made on price, to be honest, because none of the suppliers was really putting emphasis on flexibility or smart usage of the electricity.
How have these assets affected your energy consumption and your energy bills?
If I compare with my previous house that was of a similar size and not too old, what I see is that I divided my energy consumption by 3. In terms of energy bill, the difference is not that big, but the higher electricity prices were compensated by a much higher efficiency. What changed a bit in our habits is indeed that we shifted from consuming during night to more trying to consume energy coming from the solar panels, so putting the dishwasher at noon rather than during the night, for instance. What is difficult to really grasp is whether this maximizing of our self-consumption, if it's the best situation for the grid, yes or no.
And we don't have a view on that. We're lacking also control. If we would be like cooking and charging the car, for instance, the heat pump could jump in at any time, increasing the peak consumption on the grid, which might impact the tariff and the amount we have to pay at the end.
And what areas would need to be solved for you to be able to provide flexibility for the grid?
For me, one aspect that is completely lacking today is the transparency about the benefit for the consumer. Only some energy geeks like I am might be aware of what they could win, and on the other hand, automation. So not having to use 6 different apps, but rather one central place where everything can be controlled at once. I'm keen to do more, to participate to flexibility and so on, but I don't have the tools today to be able to do it, nor in terms of controlling my own house, nor information from the grid I should have to be able to answer at the right time.
Very interesting story. And I'm joined now by Hanne Pittonvils from the Viewpoint. Hello, Hanne, and welcome here on stage. Very interesting video with a lot of barriers, a lot of points. But before we deep dive into that, can you tell us why should we as a consumer care about flexibility?
Yes, well, Tom, more and more people will have an EV, will have a heat pump at their house, and so that will actually lead to their electricity consumption increasing. Now, flexibility is actually a mean to optimize this electricity consumption and keep their energy costs, their energy bill under control. So in the study, we look at an example of an EV owner, and he can save 320 euros from adopting a flexible charging behavior.
320 euros, that's a lot of money, Hanne, and I presume that a lot of people who are watching or here in the room would be interested in that. What should we do?
So it's actually very simple. Market prices, energy prices, they change over the course of the day, over the course of the week. So what you have to do to valorize your flexibility is move away your consumption from these peak moments, pre-peak price moments, and consume more when the prices are low. So in the example of the EV owner, that would mean that you would plug in your car, but the charging would be scheduled then at those moments when the prices are low.
So people can save money by being more flexible. That's a clear message. Now, Nicolas is obviously not average Joe or average Nicolas. He describes himself as an energy geek. He works in the sector, but even he encountered some barriers. Now, what are the most important ones you saw in the video?
Yes, so we see that Nicola is already making a very good first reflection. He's thinking about when to put on his dishwasher so he can use as much of his own solar energy as possible. So that's a very good first step. That's what we call self-consumption optimization. Now, Nicola, he doesn't get any price signal or reward to consume in the moments when it's most beneficial for the whole energy system. And why is that? It's because, first of all, almost all households in Belgium and in Germany, they are on a fixed price contract. So then you pay the same price for your electricity the whole month or the whole year. So if you would then shift your consumption in time, you would still have paid the same energy bill. And then secondly, you don't only pay for your energy, there's also other costs on your energy bill, like network grid fees. And these other costs can dampen the incentives for your flexibility and in some cases even contradict. So an example of this is the capacity tariff in Flanders. There you pay more or higher grid fees the higher your consumption peak is. And this can contradict the incentive for flexibility.
Now, we saw a lot in the video of Nicolas. We also saw the newest technology installed in his new built home and also a smart meter. Now, Hanne, is he a minority in Belgium and Germany?
Well, that actually depends on where he lives. We saw in the video that Nicola is living in Flanders with his family. There, almost half of the population has already a smart meter. Now, if we look at the other regions in Belgium, Walloon region, Brussels region, and also in Germany, there are not even 10% of the people have a smart meter. If we compare it to other countries, other European countries, what we also see on the map, is that we are really lagging behind, actually. Countries like Sweden, like Spain, they have already finalized their smart meter rollout.
Now, these barriers don't just exist in Germany or Belgium. All over Europe, we see that end users are still not involved enough in providing flexibility. Helen visited BUC, the umbrella organization that defends the interests of consumers at the European level. Let's have a look.
There are too many barriers yet. First one, there are not enough flexible contracts that are available so that consumers can provide their flexibility to the system. For example, in Belgium, in Brussels and in Wallonia, you cannot have such contracts as a customer. So no availability in spite of a European legislation. Second, even where they are available, people are not informed. They don't know how it works, they don't know what the benefits are. So that's also not good. You really need to be aware of the benefits of that. Third, even if you are informed, there is still a lack of consumer trust, because if something goes wrong, the consumer rights are still a little bit shaky. The last point is the fact that people are so much used to their traditional energy contracts that it's difficult to move them. There is really inertia, and if you really want them to move and to switch to more modern contracts, you need to make demand-side flexibility fun, convenient and attractive, and then you will have the people on board.
Now, Hanne, we already talked about flexible contracts, but a lack of information about the benefits on how flexibility works is clearly a very big barrier. This is also one of the big points in the study.
Yes, indeed, Tom. So that's also what we saw as one of the main blocking points. I think a lot of consumers will recognize this, but not everybody knows what flexibility is. And then more importantly, not everybody knows how to make their consumption flexible and what value they can gain from it. And this is all very important to, of course, have the consumer on board. We also often think that it's still something for a niche audience, while if we look at countries like Norway, 75% of the people, they are already on a dynamic contract.
Yeah, that's huge numbers. Now, the benefits are not widely known enough. We saw Nicolas, but as I already said, he points himself out as an energy geek. Now, lots of people are still hesitant, and some people are even afraid of flexibility.
Yes, so as we saw in the video of BUC, people are rather conservative when it comes to energy. So they're stuck to their traditional contract, don't question it too often. And the lack of knowledge is also resulting in a fear about people's comfort, privacy, and people are scared or find it a strange idea that a third party, a service provider, is steering their flexible assets. Now, this should actually not be the case. That's why we have those energy service providers, to develop services that really make sure that the comfort of these consumers is still met.
Now, clearly, there is a lot of work ahead to get everybody on board the flexibility train. Now, thank you very much, Hanne, for your clarification. And so we come to the third and final player facing challenges: energy service providers. What barriers do they face? And for that, we went to visit SmartIn, a European business association which integrates consumer-driven solutions of the clean energy transition. They started by outlining a couple of barriers that are standing in the way of unlocking consumer-side flexibility.
Blurred price signals are still existing, both in the form of retail offers that are not dynamic and linked to wholesale fluctuation, and network charges that are not cost-reflective. Limits to data access and sharing are also very persisting. Our sector is strictly dependent on the regulatory framework. At EU level, all these barriers have been tackled. They need to be implemented at national level. And we need a total change in mindset if we are convinced in the value of a consumer-centric market design. We need a strong cooperation between all system operators, national regulatory authorities and market players.
And now we are joined here by Florian Reinke, our third expert of the Viewpoint team. Now, Florian, as SmartIn points out, energy service providers are facing many barriers too. But before we deep dive into those barriers, can you explain to us what is an energy service provider?
Of course, yeah. So an energy service provider is basically a company that provides electricity to the customer, but not only electricity, also data services and flexibility. And an energy service provider is also a company that needs new capabilities. Yeah, they need to forecast the behavior of the consumer. They need to steer the assets, and those capabilities are not really widespread in the market.
Yeah. For Smart N, there seems to be a lot of problems regarding how actors from across the energy system cooperate and work together. This is also a clear barrier in the viewpoint.
Yes, I mean, there are a lot of barriers concerning the organization and related processes of several market actors. And actually what we should do is to make the information exchange, the data exchanges as smooth as possible, as cheap as possible, which would then also bring down the system costs for data transmission.
We also heard that there are some barriers related to data access. This is something that sounds very familiar in your ears, Florian.
Yes, I mean, even if a smart meter is installed, some barriers will remain. On the one hand side, you have the connectivity to near real-time asset data and connectivity to the assets itself to steer the asset. And there we clearly see issues with the interoperability of the assets and the adoption of standards in the market. Beside that, we have the data exchange processes for settlement data, for smart meter data. Therein, we have well-established processes, but they are quite complex sometimes and also costly.
Something we already heard, and we also saw it in the video of Nicolas. There's also a number of growth in different apps and devices to steer flexibility. That's obviously a problem too.
Yeah, there are many apps in the market, and actually all of them are addressing the same issue. As I was saying, you have the interoperability issues with the devices. So if you have your PV system or if you have a heat pump, you usually have these assets from different manufacturers. And the manufacturers have or follow different standards. So what the startups are doing is to actually solve these issues by implementing some additional connectivity to install additional hardware, which make the system quite complex again. And the issue stays the same. If we solve the interoperability issue, then actually we may also have less apps and more connectivity and simpler systems for the consumer.
Less apps, more connectivity. There's also a lack of standards, and next to that, there's a very complex regulatory framework. I already talked with Jan about it for the industrials, but it's also for the energy service providers clearly a barrier.
Yeah, I mean, here maybe taking an example from Germany. As I was explaining, the data exchange processes, so basically how you exchange settlement data from the smart meters, are quite complex and but well defined. I mean, in Germany we have a lot of rule books defining the data formats, the identifiers being used by all involved market actors, and these technical rule books are written in German language. What makes it quite difficult for international ESPs to follow those rule books, to implement IT tools around it. And yeah, and this is definitely an issue for international players, but also an issue for the evolutions that we currently see in the market. That we get several evolutions, several new data formats, and all the players have to adapt them.
Yeah, that's already a very clear takeaway for me. Improve my German. Now, thank you, Florian, and the whole team for this clear explanation. Now, it's clear there are still many barriers in the way for energy service providers. And to ensure we give them a voice, we will now hear from a company called Augie.
Wij werken rond energiemanagement in vastgoed. De energieverbruikers in vastgoed zijn per definitie vrij klein. Maar het zijn er heel veel samen. Allemaal samen komen ze neer op ongeveer 40% van het energieverbruik ter wereld. Dus dat is een serieuze blok. In die blok zit heel veel flexibiliteit. We kunnen perfect die warmtepomp iets vroeger of iets later aanzetten, zonder dat de gebruiker van het gebouw dat merkt in comfort. Dat is een enorme flexibiliteit die inherent aanwezig is in het vastgoed, die wij willen ontsluiten. Er zijn actoren nodig, zoals wij, die ervoor zorgen dat het leven van de eindconsument gemakkelijk wordt, zodanig dat zijn flexibiliteit die hij heeft, aangeboord kan worden. Zonder daarom die eindgebruiker het leven moeilijk te maken met termen zoals flexibiliteit enzovoort. De eindconsument die wil gewoon zijn steentje bijdragen in de energietransitie op een gemakkelijke manier. En als het kan er nog een centje aan verdienen ook. Dus als wij vooruitgang willen boeken als start-up, dan verwachten wij van Elia bijvoorbeeld dat zij ons toegang verschaffen tot die energiemarkten, zonder dat we daar heel veel complexe ontwikkeling voor moeten doen. Wij focussen op het gebruikersgemak van de eindklant. Wij hopen dat anderen zich bezighouden met het voor ons gemakkelijk maken om die flexibiliteit van die eindklant te kunnen gaan valoriseren. Ik verwacht ook dat trekkers in deze industrie zijn de Elia, de overheden, de DSO's aan hetzelfde touw trekken en gaan samenwerken om te zorgen dat bedrijven zoals wij gemakkelijker toegang krijgen tot die flexibiliteitsmarkt, zodat wij onze value proposition voor onze eindklant kunnen waarmaken.
I've now been joined by the co-founder of Orgi, Stefan Lodewijk. Stefan, thank you for joining us. Now, Orgi partnered up with Jabba Energy to design a smart energy management system for residential consumers who own batteries. Could you tell us a bit more about this system?
Yes, sure. So first of all, Jabba, it started off about 3-4 years ago, and what really inspired me is it's a group of people that were going to sell batteries, but they said we need to do more than batteries. We need to actually help the transition, so not only do self-consumption in the batteries. So we joined them and we said, okay, what can you actually do? So they decided to become an energy service provider, which was also mentioned. And what we now do is we forecast all different types of load production, energy market prices, and we control the batteries to help the customers save money. That's the baseline of what we do at the moment.
Right. Now, we heard Tom and Florian there discussing some of the barriers that energy service providers such as yourselves might face when they're trying to unlock consumer-side flexibility. Do these ring true for you? Do you recognize them?
Yeah, obviously. It's stuff that when I started 10 years ago, I mean, this was like mind-blowing stuff. Now it's like common. Everyone recognizes these topics, but still, even now, these are really problem areas. So I also recognize that a lot of startups like ourselves are looking at workarounds just to get to the data to be able to control. So the three big things like, okay, getting access on a very simple way to all types of readable data in the system, whether it's energy consumption, production, whether it's market data, other metadata, getting easy access, that's really important, just the reading part. Be able to then make analysis what you should be doing, and then putting that digital overlay on there to be able to control, leading to the second problem, which I also heard, like you need to be able to control the devices. So again, here we have put other layers on top of that to be able to control those devices, worked very well with Java. And then the third element is, okay, once you have that, reading, writing, you also need to understand how the market works and actually what are the real triggers to earn money for that, to help stimulate their energy transition. Also here, you need to understand it from all the details to actually really implement and get value. So making that a lot easier for a lot of startups, that would facilitate it a lot more. And then obviously, startup, we are a startup. In the big world of the energy, it's also not a difficult, it's not an easy thing to get your position in there. So there's quite some hurdles, yes.
Sure. And imagine if we could solve these barriers. How would your offer for customers be improved? What would it mean for you?
Well, very simple. We heard it here also. It should become sexy, appealing. People would like to do that. And we also start seeing that now with Java, that it is becoming interesting. People feel pride and honor that they are part of the Java community. That's already a first start. So if we can kind of multiply this tenfold, hundredfold, then indeed kind of the whole country, the whole European continent and wider can actually be part of that transition, where now it's being stuck. So actually, myself also have served in the telecom area. I heard the element about standards. That was really common good in the telecom. And thanks to that, we've brought a myriad of new services which no one would have thought imaginable. So the same, if we can really digitize that backbone of the energy system, we can bring that Internet of Energy and the services on top of that. So we can bring so much euros. The customers will get euros and the system will become a greener and a better system.
Right, sounds pretty good. Thank you, Stefan. It's back to you, Tom.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Helen. Now, as mentioned earlier, the team also involved students in this year's study, and I'm joined here on stage by some fresh power, some fresh energy from the students. Hello to Anton Segers from the KU Leuven and Luco Noor-Jelle, I hope I pronounce it well, from the TU Berlin. Welcome to both of you. Now, maybe let's start with a quick question. Did you have a lot of fun doing the Elia Group's challenge? Hey, Luco?
Yeah, definitely. Like the energy transition is one of the biggest challenges of our generation, I would say. and startups are driving power in this. And being part or having the opportunity to actively participate and work on your own idea with experts from the industry was really interesting and fun.
So I jumped into this opportunity with a lot of excitement, being part of this challenge where we actively contribute to enabling flexibility as students has been both meaningful and motivating for us. And also as a team, it was quite fun to make the vlogs for Elia.
Quite fun, but there were also some very, very good results. And I might say that you both are from the winning teams of the challenge, so congratulations. But now it's time to pitch. Can you tell us, what did you come up with? What startup idea did you develop?
Our idea was Looniverse. Looniverse is the all-in-one solution for end consumers. So basically, it includes everything connected with electricity consumption of the private consumers. And it allows the centrally controlling of various devices from various manufacturers, such as heat pumps and PVs. And through this optimization, or like this controlled optimization, we're able to save actively money for the customers and thus actively motivate them to participate in the flexibility.
Yeah, so in the Looniverse we'll all save some money. That's already a very good idea.
Yeah, sounds very interesting. So, our startup is CoAmp, and we have a platform between employers and employees. And so we can aggregate their assets. And in this way, we can respond on the fact that an employee can only be at one place at a time, so at the workplace or at home. Additionally, we are introducing an innovative extra legal benefit scheme where an employee can include his solar panels, his batteries, or his heat pumps into the salary package in order to accelerate the much-needed energy transition.
Very interesting, CoAmp as well. I hope that some investors or some companies are really very interested in that. Now, we're talking about barriers, solutions. What barriers did you encounter during your exercise, during your startup?
I think our main barrier was the access of APIs of different devices. So many manufacturers make it actually pretty difficult to access those APIs. But there's ways to work around, so I think it can be solved.
Anton?
And so our main hurdle was the peer-to-peer energy trade across different voltage levels. At the moment in Belgium, it's only possible to do that on the low voltage level and only in Flanders. Also, to overcome the market challenges of consumer engagement, we will target companies in order to maximize our reach to employees and incentivize participation through gamifications.
Okay, very nice, very nice. Thank you very much, and I would really like to ask a little applause for our students and for the winners of the Student Challenge. Thank you, Luco. Now, let's move from the barriers towards the solutions. Earlier on, Maria told us that there are three main solutions to make our system more flexible: providing consumers with access to financial incentives, introducing flex-ready assets to provide flexibility in the easiest way possible, and enabling seamless data access for energy service providers. Now, let's take a look at these solutions. We'll start with the financial incentives, and for that, we are going to the UK. We'll hear from Octopus Energy, a British renewable energy group specializing in sustainable energy. Octopus Energy is using a product called SmartFlex from their sister company called Kraken to empower its intelligent octopus terrace for consumers. A lot of tentacles there. How this works, we'll see in the upcoming video.
Octopus Energy has used this SmartFlex capability to design a tariff called Intelligent Octopus. So the consumer will tell Octopus Energy, please charge my car by tomorrow morning. In exchange, Octopus Energy says to the consumer, by giving me this flexibility, I'm going to give you a very large discount on the electrons that go into your car. So it's a win-win.
The variable rates is from 11:30 in the evening through till 5:30 in the morning. That's when it's cheap. So that's when we set up things like recharging the house battery and charging the car battery. And really, once it's set up, you just pretty much forget about it. I can just look at the app first thing in the morning and I see a fully charged battery and a fully charged car.
The beauty of the whole product is it's completely digital end-to-end. From the sign-up to the billing of the consumer and trading of the power is fully automated. It has grown about 20% month on month, over 700 megawatt hours of charging that's happening overnight, that's completely shiftable.
I don't think there really is a compromise. I think you can get everything that you want, but do it in a slightly more eco-friendly way. It's fantastic. I feel as though I'm doing my bit for the planet as much as my pocket.
We have to appreciate that making change in this industry requires multiple stakeholders to come together. And what has happened in the UK, especially during the last couple of years, is all these parties coming together to start trying things out. And before we get to big policy change, come up with the policy through incremental steps. So when we launch it, it's perfectly fit for purpose. And I think we can learn from what we have achieved in UK and some other regions as well, and share that, so not everyone has to go through the same learning process. They can benefit for what has been achieved in the UK.
Now, once again, we are joined here on stage by Hanne from the Viewpoint team. Hanne, we heard it earlier, financial incentives work. We all want to lower our energy bills, but how will we make it possible, Hanne?
So we need to actually set a couple of steps to give the consumers the right financial incentives. So first of all, people need to be educated more about energy prices. Secondly, everyone needs to be equipped with a smart meter to track their flexible consumption. And then people need to have access to the right energy contracts to valorize their flexibility. Now, to make this all work and efficient, we also need an upgraded market design that puts the consumer in the center and is better suited to valorize this flexibility.
Yes, we'll deep dive into the market design later with our colleague David Zenner. But let's go back to those smart meters. What is holding us back, Hanne? What are we waiting for?
So first of all, of course, you need to be able to get a smart meter. In Belgium, the rollout has started in all regions, but in Germany, that's not the case. So the metering point operators really need to work and accelerate to start these rollouts. Then secondly, the rollout itself must be organized in an efficient way as possible. So how can we do that? Is by giving the right priorities in the rollout. So we have to make sure that the people with the most flexible potential are equipped with a smart meter first. And then also, if you want a smart meter, it must be very simple, easy and transparent to get one.
Yeah, smart meters, basically, they deliver information on the energy consumption of consumers. Why is having access to this information so important?
So, well, you can have a smart meter at your house. You can also have the right or your supplier offering the right contract, but that doesn't mean that you will start unlocking your flexibility. So consumers really need to gain more knowledge about their own energy consumption and also about the market, how it works and how they can benefit from it. And then consumers will be able to make the right decisions to really optimize their energy bill consumption and fully unlock their flexibility.
Yeah, we're talking of households, but what is needed for the industrials?
So for companies, it's a bit similar. Companies struggle today with building a business case around flexibility. So they need to have tools available, guidance at their disposal to really help them include these flexibility options into their energy roadmaps. And then they can really make the right investment decisions and in the future save money from their flexibility.
Mm-hmm. Now, another thing that comes up often and is also included in the study is the introduction of flexible tariffs. Now, Tiber is an energy company that has developed their special way to provide flexible tariffs to a wide range of consumers. Let's have a look.
So Merlin, could you describe your core offer for your customers, this hourly dynamic tariff?
So our hourly dynamic tariff is based on the spot market price of the EPIC spot. Imagine a customer, Eve, who will now be able to benefit from real-time prices, which means that her hourly consumption is actually now not multiplied by a fixed price for the entire month, but by the actual price of electricity for that hour. And of course, then in the end of the month, the invoice is built in a way where we just look at the hourly consumption multiplied by the hourly price. We sum that up for the month, and that makes up the total invoice.
How have you expanded your offer to ensure that all customers can benefit from this tariff?
So only a very small percentage of German households actually has a smart meter, which is the technical requirement for a dynamic tariff. For that, we have developed a piece of hardware, a device that we call the Pulse. It's an electricity tracker that can be mounted to your digital meter if you don't have a smart meter yet, and that will allow you to track your live consumption in the app, and through that also be billed hourly for your electricity consumption.
And how have customers responded to Pulse?
Customers have really responded overwhelmingly positive. It opens up all kinds of ways to really increase the understanding for your own consumption, and also, of course, to start consuming energy in a smart way.
And what's your typical use case for Pulse?
So the most common use case is smart charging. And how does that work? You plug in your EV at night when you come home, but instead of starting to charge right at that moment, we take a look at how you are specifying your needs in the app. What's your average distance that you drive per day? What is the minimum electricity that you want to have in your EV battery? And with that, we automatically move your charging sessions to the cheapest hours of the day. So it becomes completely effortless for you.
And what role do you see yourselves playing as kind of innovative suppliers in this?
I think one of our biggest jobs is to raise awareness, not only for the opportunities for you individually, but also the importance of becoming more flexible in our consumption when we look at the energy transition. And our biggest job, in our opinion, is to just make this rather complex topic as easy to understand and as accessible as possible, and to empower our customers through our app to actually not only understand their consumption, but also start consuming energy in a smart way, while this being completely effortless for them.
Now, Hanne, Tibber clearly sees its role in raising awareness about the benefits of flexibility. Is this the way forward for providers, coming up with new innovative ways to make sure that a wider pool of consumers have access to flexible consumption?
Yes, indeed. So with a smart meter at hand, also the knowledge available, then consumers can make the right choices to access contracts that valorize their flexibility and give them a financial incentive. And so their suppliers play a very important role to offer a wide set of contracts that valorizes flexibility and also meet the risk appetite of consumers. So in the example of Tibber, we see that they offer a dynamic contract following market prices, and they offer services then to steer your assets according to these market prices.
Yeah. Obviously, Tibber is not the only provider having such a flexible examples. Can you give us some more?
Yes, we also saw in the video earlier tonight, Octopus Energy, what they do is they offer a fixed price contract, but they give you a big reduction fee when they can unlock your flexibility of your flexible assets.
So more and more choice in the future, it's a good thing. What can we do as a TSO to support the financial incentives for the consumers?
So we as Elia Group, we're calling to further shape on an improved market design that will facilitate new services and that will also help to put these financial incentives to the consumer and to valorize flexibility in a better way.
Yeah, that's a clear mission. Thank you very much, Hanne. Now, of course, a flexible energy system requires flexible devices, which are interoperable by design. This means they can all work together as part of one energy management system. And things are moving fast. Electrical cars, smart home appliances, heat pumps, the scale is endless. But how are we going to make all these devices work together? Helen headed to the Netherlands to find out. She starts by interviewing Elat about the research they have been undertaking on the Dutch grid.
Research from Elia, who I'm visiting today, has demonstrated that in a residential neighborhood of 250 households, if 15 EVs start charging at the same time, the local grid could come into difficulties in future. I'm here to find out more about how Elia have been working with FAN to really unlock and harness consumer flexibility. Frank, we're here at Elia's Knowledge and Innovation Centre. What is it that you test exactly?
In this lab, we are testing new innovations related to charging infrastructure. So vehicles, charging stations, how do they interact with the power grid?
Right, and I understand that you work on a range of different things, so interoperability, power quality, that kind of thing, is that right?
Yeah, so we think interoperability is an important step in developing this market, so that you as customer don't have the hassle of being concerned, does my car work with my charge station? Electric vehicles can charge at very interesting of high power. They have large storage capacities. And in the near future, they also will be able to do bidirectional charging, so delivering back electricity to the grid when it's needed.
Adrian, you work for the Flexible Power Alliance Network. Could you tell us a bit more about open standards and interoperability?
In the future, we want to combine those EVs with other sources in the house, for instance, electronic heating in heat pumps, or the solar system, or a battery. All these different kind of devices, they need to work together, and you can only integrate them through open standards. If you would implement it, it would be cheaper for the consumer, and also it will give the consumer less hassle to choose the right heat pump, for example, in their homes that can work together with their energy supplier.
Of course. And you work both in the Netherlands but also abroad, is that correct?
A lot of innovations, they are made and developed for the European market, so we need to engage with all these companies in order to get the open standards implemented in what we call energy smart appliances.
Now, for the second solution, Jan has rejoined me here on stage. Now, in the study, Jan, you put forward the development of a flex-ready label. You need to explain what this means to us.
Well, Tom, today, believe it or not, there is no official requirements or not even an official definition of what we can consider a smart and steerable asset. Elia talks in their video about a smooth consumer experience. They talk about interoperability, they talk about open standards, but this smooth experience should already start when consumers are purchasing or buying a product. That's why Elia Group is working together with manufacturers and other system operators on standardization. And we are ready to contribute to a flex-ready label. Now, what is the idea of this flex-ready label? It's that it's applied to devices that meet certain requirements. This can create a competitive advantage for the manufacturers. They have a label proving that their device is ready to provide flexibility, and consumers can buy this product with confidence that it's future-proof.
Now, Jan, obviously not all devices are flex-ready. There needs to be some requirements to be flex-ready.
Indeed. We focus on three main criteria. The first one is the ability to modulate, meaning that the device must be able to adapt its load, its power consumption, based on an external signal, namely the price signal that we have talked about here already today, and this way create value for its owner, for the consumer. A second one is a communication interface. These devices need to be able to communicate with other devices, with other tools, such as an energy management system, and it's important here that this can go both outwards, the device communicates on its current state of operation, its current consumption, and inwards. The device receives an order, a control signal from the energy management tool. The third important part is metering, or the embedded measurement devices. These devices will adopt flexible behavior, dynamic behavior, and so their owners will be rewarded for the contribution they deliver to the grid. To be able to do that in an adequate way, we need trusted information, we need precise data on an adequate timescale, depending on what service this device provides.
So we need to be flex-ready in our mindset. We need to have a flex-ready device, but it's not enough. We also need what you call interoperability. It's a very difficult word, but what does it mean?
Indeed. We saw in the Octopus video, they talk about different market players coming together, working together, communicating. And the idea of interoperability is that the devices and the tools they put into the market do the same thing. To be able to do this, these devices need to be designed in such a way that they meet communication standards and can communicate seamlessly with other devices, with other tools. Different standards, different approaches exist for this. We're not here to point at one standard or one approach. This is a good approach, this is a bad approach. Manufacturers know their product. They know which standards are adequate for their product. And this way, they can provide an adequate solution to provide a smooth consumer experience and unlocking flexibility.
Thank you, Jan. You talk of flex-ready devices and heat pumps. They can be a very good example of this, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So let's have a look at what the European Heat Pump Association thinks about them.
From the member states, we need them to implement the Electricity Market Design Directive so that flexible tariffs are actually offered to consumers and this flexibility gets a value. Then we also need from all market actors to really create more awareness about this flexibility that heat pumps can offer. What we also need is that grid operators take into account into their planning the flexibility that heat pumps can offer. And then what we also need, a more technical thing, is a standardized future-proof communication protocol which allows heat pumps to communicate with the building energy management systems, and that should be implemented in a harmonized way across the whole EU.
Now, future-proofing communication protocols and other data issues are covered in the study's last solutions, and we're ending on a high with Florian once again from the team. Now, Florian, the viewpoint advocates what you call seamless data access process and data access for energy service providers. The question is, of course, Florian, how will you do it?
Yeah, European legislation has already started to address this issue, actually by putting the consumer to the center. The consumer usually is now seen to be the data owner and not the manufacturer of the asset. You should know that the manufacturer of a heat pump or a car already processes a lot of data internally for maintenance reasons, for example. And so the data is there. But now the legislation is saying, okay, if the consumer wishes that the data is shared with the ESP, then the manufacturer has to share the data, which is, from my opinion, a good thing, especially for flexibility provision, because the ESPs need the data.
And is there a role for us to play, Florian, as a TSO?
I mean, at the end, what we need is a robust and secure data ecosystem. And we can bring and contribute a lot of experience in setting up such a system. But for all the market purposes, we cannot do it alone. What we need is a strong collaboration of TSOs, DSOs, BRPs, and everybody has to bring their knowledge together and set up the system. Actually, the member states should coordinate the process of implementing such an ecosystem.
Yeah, so strong collaboration is needed in this sector. Thank you very much, Florian. And now with that, we now have had a clear overview of all the barriers standing in the way and also many proposed solutions for unlocking consumer-side flexibility. However, more will be needed. As Florian just said, the way in which the energy system works needs to change. I'll now give the word and the floor back to Marleen, who is joined by two gentlemen, and she will tell us more.
They appeared briefly at the beginning of the event, and now they are live with us here in the studio. Welcome, gentlemen. Welcome, Stefan Kapfer, CEO of 50 Hertz, and Frédéric Dunon, Deputy CEO of Elia. There's much room for improvement. Stefan, let's start in Germany. The rollout of the digital meter is a real problem. How to tackle this?
Yeah, we've heard it several times today that digital tools are needed to harvest the full potential of flexibility. And in private households, when we talk about decentralized flexibility, obviously smart meter rollout is key. What we have seen the last few years is some concerns about privacy, maybe also some engineering ambitions very high in Germany. But there is hope ahead. Germany is no longer lagging behind. We have seen a restart by a new legal framework, and I'm optimistic we will catch up now.
Germany is the biggest economy in Europe, so you might expect many opportunities in terms of industrial flexibility. Let's now listen to some thoughts from Holger Lösch from the Federation of German Industries and Stefan Timm from the German Association of Offshore Wind Farm Operators.
Being flexible and losing competitiveness by being flexible, this is something industry will not accept. So we need models, we need systems where competitiveness can be kept. International competitiveness, European competitiveness can be kept. And on the other hand, we really open up those potentials of flexibility. And this can only be done if we really come to a huge digitalization of the whole system. There, I would say we are still very much at the beginning.
It's now the time to build the regulatory framework on this. I'm not so sure if the households should be the first players to offer flexibility. I see more the industrial players in this role, but in the future, maybe in the 30s, I'm quite sure even households can offer somehow flexibility, maybe by charging the car or using the washing machine. It's an option.
Industry is open to flexibility in Germany, but we talked already about the 7,000-hour rule. We heard that industry is even scared that they are penalized if they are involved in flexibility. So that seems to be a big problem.
Yeah, obviously we need these kind of industrial flexibility. And also there, a new regulatory framework was established earlier this year by the German government, but much less attractive as the restart in the smart Reno rollout. And the reason is there is no economic benefit included for industry offering flexibility to the market. So when 50 Hertz started a tender process earlier this year, we received no offers. And obviously, economic benefit is part of every discussion about untapping flexibility potential. But I'm a little bit more optimistic, as Stefan Timm of the Offshore Wind Organization in Germany. I'm optimistic when we talk about decentralized flexibility as well. And one aspect was highlighted by Florian a minute ago. What about the situation between the owner of the car, between the car manufacturer, the TSO, the DSO? And I think it's obvious. The owner of the car is the owner of the flexibility. So he is a key player in the system. The other key player is the grid operator, because the grid operator has to balance the system also in the future. And we have to look at the retail market. But all the other stakeholders, wasted interests, are less important when we want to untap decentralized flexibility.
Thank you, Stefan. Frederik, before we coming to you, let's listen to some additional statements from Carsten Rolle from the World Energy Council Germany and Andreas Gens from the German Association of Energy and Water Industries.
I think private households are not yet always aware of the potential they could provide flexibility, as some of the prerequisites are missing, and especially the flexible tariffs as one of the key prerequisites for that are still missing. With framework conditions like these, I think those potentials could be reaped a lot better. But of course, there's also information campaigns that could help.
Das muss sich noch entwickeln. Ich glaube doch nicht, dass wir so weit sind, das neue System mit Flexibilitäten tatsächlich zu verstehen. Wir kommen aus einer anderen Welt, in der Flexibilitäten keine Rolle gespielt haben. Das muss sich erst noch zeigen, muss erst noch entwickelt werden, gemeinsam mit den Kunden, das System dafür. Und ja, auch der Blick dafür muss sich noch schärfen. Preissignale sind sicherlich ein gutes Mittel, um ein Umdenken zu befördern. Aber wir müssen natürlich auch immer auf die soziale Akzeptanz achten. Wir dürfen niemanden überfordern. Energiepreise sind sehr sensibel und deshalb braucht es dort in erster Linie Überzeugung und die Entwicklung neuer Modelle.
Yeah, we are not ready yet for flexibility. There's some room for improvement about acceptance. Frederik, what can we do as system operators in that regard?
I think awareness is one of the key challenges that we have to solve. The energy system is becoming so complex and that's basically difficult for households, for owners of SMEs, for industries to understand all the characteristics of the energy system. What we can do for that and that we do in Belgium is that we reinforce our cooperation with federations like VOCA, like UE, and we organize workshops together with their members to explain what is flexibility, to explain the value it could bring to them with their existing system, but also what it could bring in the future when they will redesign their processes.
That's only for industry.
That's for industry, and we see indeed also that for household there is still a lot to be done to have them fully on board.
Yeah, but we cannot do it alone, of course.
We cannot do it alone. Indeed, we need to cooperate, and not only for awareness, but also for the other barriers that we discussed earlier today in the discussions. I think that as a system operator, we have also a central role. By nature, we are in the center of the system, then we need to take a role of leader in this transformation. That's also the reason why we decide to reinforce our cooperation with the distribution system operators. But even with them, we cannot solve everything by ourselves. Like, for instance, it was also discussed earlier today all about the capacity tariff in Flanders. That's a regulatory barrier that we cannot solve by ourselves. There is still a lot of legal work to be done to solve that. Also, like Stefan mentioned, all about the digital meters. It's not well accepted everywhere in Belgium. Certainly not for the owners of the solar PV. They have some difficulties to accept that for the moment. But I'm convinced that if we can demonstrate the added value, like we did in the study, they will also sooner than later request a digital meter at home.
That's a big mind change in Flanders, I would say. Once you have the smart meters in place, once you have the social acceptance, once you have a market model, how long will it take before we really can speak about consumer-side centricity in Belgium and in Germany?
Very good question. And I would like to answer in two parts. First, for the customers connect to the OR grid, and after that, for the consumers connect to the distribution system grids. For the first category, I have to say we made a lot of progress this year, and we will be able to come with some concepts next month, in December 23, the so-called multiple BRP concept, which David Zenner will explain later on today. For the second category, the consumer connect to the DSOs. Like I said, we decide to reinforce our cooperation with the DSOs in Belgium, but it's a bit too soon to come with some dates. And we are now looking into the detail about the planning, and we will probably communicate on that together with them early next year.
Okay. Stefan, in one of the opening videos, you highlighted that every 6 hours in Germany, in the 50 Hertz control zone, you have 100% of renewable energy. So flexibility seems to me a no-brainer.
Yeah, and I'm sure in the year 2023, it will be every 5th hour. So it's a growing share of renewables in more and more hours every year. And obviously, the whole system is under stress. That's obvious to me. We see a phasing out situation of reliable capabilities in Germany. We have heard about the nuclear phase out earlier this year. We have to phase out the coal power plants as soon as possible. At the same time, the share of renewables is growing. The electrification of every sector, heating, transport, is increasing the peak load in the system. So flexibility is key. And it is confirmed in the Grid Expansion Development Plan for 2045 that we will need 80 gigawatt of industrial flexibility in Germany, and at the same time, 80 gigawatt of decentralized flexibility. Yep. That's huge. And that means we have to use it in a twofold way. If the availability of renewable energy is high, of course, flexibility is key by sector coupling for power-to-heat systems, for example, electrolyzers in the future. And if the production of renewable energy is low, we will need the storage capacities and also the flexibility to reduce demand. That's crucial to manage the system as a TSO in the future.
Indeed, and that brings us back to the beginning of this show, that it is a win-win both for the consumers and the system. Thank you, gentlemen. Please give them an applause. As Frederik already mentioned, in Belgium, we are set to take a significant step forward for industrial customers connected to the Elia grid. Later this year, in December, They will have the option to split their consumption in two, allowing them to have both flexible and non-flexible consumption. The concept known as the multiple BRP will be further elaborated by David Sander after we watched a video that explains what it is about.
In the future, the system will require more flexibility to keep the energy transition affordable and reliable. Elia Group is working hard to make this possible and unlock the real power of flexibility. For example, by laying the groundwork for flexible assets to find their way to the market. For this, allowing multiple balance responsible parties behind the meter can have a huge effect. They make it possible to split the site's flexible and non-flexible assets. For each asset, the BRP can offer a tailor-made financial optimization. This gives more opportunities to the site owner and also increases competition for energy services behind the meter. Imagine an industrial site with 2 BRPs. Production processes are optimized by a BRP with a fixed and risk-free energy contract. The company knows how much electricity this non-flexible process needs and doesn't want to incur risk on its energy supply. But the site also has batteries, PVs and EVs. For these flexible assets, the company has another BRP that performs financial optimization based on dynamic market prices.
Multiple BRP is one of the first products that is coming live, but it is more than that. It's one of the cornerstones of our consumer-centric market design, as you can see on the slide. It is our consumer-centric market design is composed of 2 main features, and the multiple BRP is really the elaboration of the first one. It allows consumers to split their consumption in different parts. Can make a split between flexible and non-flexible load and optimize parts of your consumption. But it's also giving more opportunities to consumer and foster competition behind that connection point. So giving much more possibilities to end consumers. That's one of the first products that will go live, but not the only one. We are working actively also on the next one you will see on the next slide. This is bringing actually the real-time price product live. It is bringing that price to end consumers as a clear ex-ante indicator to which also grid users and market parties then can optimize their consumption, valorize that flexibility, and get more out of that. You could compare it to an Uber, for example. If you take an Uber, you get also an indication of the price upfront, what it will be after your ride, of course, if everything goes smooth. Well, in the electricity system, that's the same approach we want to put live. We want to give a clear indication ex ante what the price will be so that you can truly valorize your flexibility afterwards. This is bringing the 2 concepts alive. Multiple BRP, offering more possibilities behind the meter, and then also having a clear signal, as already was indicated as one of the solutions to unlock flexibility. But now how to bring that real-time price to the end consumer? That's what you see on the next slide. Actually, we're going to combine both elements and give a direct market access to end consumers, grid users, to valorize that flexibility. Here again, I would like a concrete example, like for example in financial markets, where you also are able as a day trader to buy a stock on the Euronext, for example, or other markets. Well, here again, we believe that if you have the possibility to trade, for example, your asset and buy electricity in the wholesale markets, this opens a wide range of possibilities. It is an option, it's by no obligation by far, but it creates a lot of more opportunities for end consumers. In all those products, we go make some significant steps in the next years. First of all, the multiple BRP will come live on the 1st of December, as was announced by Marleen already. And on the next products, we'll make some significant steps next year. This, we truly believe, will give a lot of more possibilities and will take away a lot of the barriers that we heard about. But we're not developing products just to develop some products. We're developing products because they respond to a clear need from our customers. And so that's why we started, for example, with the multiple BRP. There's a concrete need from a couple of our directly connected customers, which we will hear in the next movie. So to wrap up, multiple BRP, one of the first ones that goes live, but let's first hear the testimonial of ArcelorMittal, who will use it.
Als staalproducent hebben wij een heel ambitieus plan om tegen 2050 onze CO2-uitstoot naar nul te reduceren en om op die manier CO2-vrij staal te produceren. Hier bij Stilanol zetten we in op het slim hergebruik van koolstof. We halen uit onze restgassen van het staalproductieproces de koolstof en we leggen die vast op een biologische manier in ethanol. Dus in het kader van de energietransitie stellen wij vast dat we in de toekomst beroep gaan moeten doen op verschillende partners voor onze energiebevoorrading. Tot op heden is het enkel mogelijk om 1 balancing responsible party aan te stellen per afnamepunt. Maar om al die projecten te kunnen realiseren op een manier zoals dat wij het graag hebben, is er dus nood om meerdere balancing responsible parties per afnamepunt te installeren. Door het concept van de multiple BRP zullen we in de toekomst verschillende mogelijkheden hebben om onze hernieuwbare projecten met zon, wind, maar ook bijvoorbeeld deze warmtekrachtkoppelingsinstallatie te implementeren op een eenvoudige manier en op een manier zoals dat wij het graag hebben.
Yeah, the concept of a multiple BRP is already positively received by ArcelorMittal. Ladies and gentlemen, we are nearing the end of this program. We have discussed the barriers, the solutions, and David has just explained the first steps in the practical implementation. But what will flexibility look like in the years ahead? We asked the Belgian Minister of Energy to give her view on the year 2030.
Picture this. We are in 2030. You get up in the morning and open the window. The smell of fresh air enters the room. You hear birds chirping as electric cars, buses and trucks drive quietly through the streets. As you get ready for the day, your smart home is already at work. Your washing machine, heat pump and other electric devices know the best time to use electricity, when it is cheapest, and that is off-peak and on sunny, windy days, when the newly finished Princess Elisabeth Zone produces cheap and green electricity for all Belgian households. You hop into your electric car to head to work. You can charge your car for free thanks to the solar panels on the company's roof. The power of the sun fuels your journey back home, saving you money and reducing your carbon footprint. And when you return home, your smart home continues its clever tricks. Your car can even send extra electricity back to the grid at night when it's not needed at home, contributed to the stability of the electricity grid. All of this happens automatically, leaving you free to enjoy a late-night drink or a midnight snack. The Power of Flex study by Elia Group provides powerful insights to guide us towards this wonderful future. Let's work together to make it happen. Cheers.
Welcome back, Katrien, for the final speaker notes of this event. We immediately pick up on what the minister just said. We have to collaborate, so we have a very nice study now, but what are the next steps?
Well, I think the first element is really a call for action. We saw today there are clear barriers, but there are clear solutions as well. And it was said by many people today, we can't do that alone. Nobody can do that alone. We need to partner, we need to cooperate together, TSOs, DSOs, BRPs, suppliers, startups, in order to unlock the full potential and to make the energy transition more affordable thanks to the benefits that we will bring to the consumers.
And we have already a next event to announce?
Of course, we'll do our part as well. So not only calling for cooperation, we will do our part as well. And in that context, I'm very pleased to announce the next hackathon of Elia Group that we will have end of March next year. And why do I believe that this event can contribute to unlocking the flexibility? Because of the theme that we will discuss. It's what David already explained, real-time pricing. So we will invite the participants to the hackathon to optimize the consumption of their flexible assets by using real-time price reference, and so we'll show the benefit of this flexibility to the system. We will invite scale-ups, startups, also corporates, and just before starting the hackathon, in the day before, we will explain in a more detailed way how real-time pricing will work. So be attentive, I would say, to the save the date that we will send in the next weeks to book this date in your calendar.
We'll do so, Katrien. And then at the end of the event, like every year, we would like to know what will be the theme of next year's study.
Yes. So this year, like you have heard, we focused on one side of the energy market, the demand side. Next year, we will focus on the other side of the energy market, so generation side, and more precisely on what is happening at seas. We know that all seas will be one of the power engines of the energy transition. There are huge ambitions at European level, and especially in the North Sea. We expect 300 gigawatt offshore, wind offshore development by 2050. It will not happen by itself, and so we will identify, together with a number of stakeholders, how we can better integrate this wind offshore into the grid, how possibly we can combine that with hydrogen, how we can come to a better cost sharing of the multiple investments which are necessary. So a very hot topic.
Yeah, to be honest, it doesn't surprise me given the growing importance of offshore wind. Okay, thank you very much, Katrien, for being here with us.
Thanks a lot. Thanks to everyone.
And I'm afraid that brings us to the end of this event. The study is now available on our website. Don't forget to have a look.
We'd like to thank everyone who contributed to the study, all of the citizens, industrial players, federations, our guests in the studio here today, of course, and of course, all of the colleagues in both Belgium and Germany who worked really, really hard over the past few months to make this study and event happen.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Tom, for your contribution. I also want to extend my thanks to you, ladies and gentlemen, live here in the studio. We warmly invite you to join us in toasting on our new Elia Group baby, the power of Flex. For the people watching us, have a nice evening, and we look forward to reconnecting with you soon. Bye-bye.